Well, good evening. This is our 20th webinar with the pioneers of the three principles. Tonight, we're honored to have Linda Pransky with us, and we'll be talking about her experiences with the principles in the last, well, 20 years or so.
More, more like more like 40 years.
Well, it doesn't really matter. Let me give you a short introduction. Linda Pransky went to graduate school at the University of Washington in 1975. She specialized in psychosocial nursing because she had an interest in learning how people change. She learned techniques and approaches to helping people, but nothing seemed long-lasting and beneficial. When she met Sid Banks in 1976, she saw a way for people to really change. Her vision came one of helping people seek real and long-lasting change. Linda is currently on the executive committee of the Three Principles Global Community, recent faculty member for the One Thought Institute, and a partner at Pransky and Associates. Linda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I wasn't looking to meet anyone like Sid Banks. Now, I was totally into psychology, totally into finding techniques and processes that I could apply when working with people. And meeting Sid was a real conundrum because you couldn't see what he was doing. He was having an effect on people, but you didn't know how. And I was used to, you'd have a construct or a way or a process or a technique so you could see what was going on, and then the consequence or the result. So when I met Sid, which was just totally serendipity, my husband, George Pransky, his partner at the time, John Enright, was up at Salt Spring with a friend of his who was also a psychologist and was the head of the Cold Mountain Institute in Canada. And he was talking with John about this man, Sid Banks, and how it looked like Sid Banks was having a tremendous effect on people in a very positive way. And that John should go listen to Sid and see what Sid was up to. John did. He couldn't tell what he was up to. So he asked George and I to go to Salt Spring. We lived in California at the time. And he asked George and I to go to Salt Spring and see if we could see what Sid was doing, his way of helping people. Well, we went and we sat in the audience because Sid was doing free lectures. And I could tell he was a very nice man, but I had no idea what he was talking about. It's like none. And he wasn't having an effect on me. So I kind of just felt like this was a whole waste of time. And but my husband, George, was like really interested in the audience and was interviewing and asking them what was happening with them. And they were telling him about all the results they were getting in their life with regards to listening to Sid Banks. And so we stayed for quite a while and talked with people. And then Sid came up to us and asked us to go back to his house, which was like, okay. He was really interested in us because we were psychologists. And so we went to his house, and we had tea and cookies, and it was all very nice. And then he said to George, well, what do you do with people? And George says, well, we get them into their negative past, and we get them into their resentments, and we get them into their negative feelings, and we have them cathartic, and we take them through this whole process, and that's what we do. And Sid says, well, for what purpose? What's your purpose? Well, so that they get over things and become happy. And he said, and he said, well, does that happen? And it's like George looked at me and I looked at him, and it's like we were both, we don't know. We were so wrapped up in the process, we weren't paying attention or looking to see if there were results. And frankly, it was very embarrassing and very humiliating. I mean, for Sid to say that and for us to not know if we were getting results with our clients. So George got really upset and he said, it's time to go. We got to catch the ferry. So he grabs me and we run out, get on the ferry. And we had driven up to Salt Spring from San Francisco. So we were driving back. And the whole way back, George was like, what does he know? What does Sid Banks know? He's not even a high school graduate. And he's telling me, and it goes on and on and on and on. And George likes to tell the story that I said to him, which I don't remember really. He says that I said to him, well, why don't you just forget about what he said? And he said, I can't forget about what he said.
That's what he told us.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
And I said, well, well, then if you can't forget about what he said, there must be something there. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So we ended up going back, and now I got committed to listening to Sid because my friend Roger Mills had started to listen to Sid and had changed dramatically from listening to Sid. And that's what really got me interested in staying with the whole process, because it was difficult to sit there and have nothing happen and not understand what Sid was saying. It wasn't easy, but I was stubborn enough, and I felt like if Roger Mills could change, I could change. And I would talk to Roger and I'd ask him, I'd say, Roger, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not getting any results. I'm not changing. Everybody's changing. I'm not changing. And Roger said, well, you're not listening properly. And I said to Roger, look, I'm listening as hard as I can. And then Roger taught me about listening. He says, you don't want to be listening by thinking and comparing and analyzing and criticizing, and you don't want to be thinking. So I said, well, how do I stop thinking? He said, I don't know, but you're going to have to stop thinking and listen. So I was like very confused because I couldn't stop thinking while Sid was talking, trying to figure out what he was saying. And I wasn't getting anything, so I was getting very discouraged. But the thing is, I just stuck with it. And I think I stuck with it because of the change I saw in my friend Roger Mills. I thought, if he could do it, I could do it. So I just kept going and going and listening the best I could, until eventually I just got hit like a ton of bricks with this insight. And I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but the insight that I had was around my moods. Because I was,
I haven't. So please do, please.
Oh. Well, I hated having moods. And when I would go into a mood, I'd really drop.
Mhm.
And when I drop, I had to kind of take time out from my life because it was so intense. Now, when I wasn't in a mood, I was great. I was really good. But I could hear the footsteps of my mood coming, and I go, oh no.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I'd drop. And and then I'd be down for a couple days and I'd be miserable and I'd be suffering. And then finally I'd come up and I'd be fine. But I hated that experience. And the insight around my moods was I realized it was so simple and it really helped me. And I don't know why, but it did. It changed me, completely changed me with relationship to my moods. I realized that my moods weren't coming from the outside. They weren't coming from circumstance. They're coming from me. And somehow that was empowering, or it made me feel better, or it made me stop feeling frightened of them. And it wasn't that I didn't have them, I still had them, but they didn't bother me. They felt, instead of feeling like this horrible experience, they felt like a nuisance. Like, oh darn, I have a mood, but that's okay, I'll get over it. And it was interesting because it was also, as I kept going down and not being terrified, but being annoyed, I started to learn. Like when I get down, I'd have the thought, I'm never going to get out of this mood. And then when I'd go up, I'd go, oh, I came out of the mood. I need to remember when I go down that I'm going to come out. So the next time I went down, I'd be, oh no, I'm never going to get out of this mood. I go up and I wait a minute. You were going to remember that when you were down, you'd come up. And then at some point I started to remember when I go down, I go, oh yeah, but I'll be going up. So every new insight I would have about my mood, it made my mood, it's almost like my mood started to flatten out. And to the point where I almost didn't even notice that I'd go into a mood, because I could still do life in a mood. I didn't have to take a time out from life. I could just still do life from a mood, which was, to me, incredible.
Mhm.
It was incredible change. It was just awesome. And I realized, as I talked with Sid about it, and I started to learn what he was doing, and what he was doing was taking people out of their intellect into listening, into a quiet mind so they could have new thought. That's what he was doing. Taking people out of their thinking into a quiet mind so they could have new thought. But it took me a bit to get out of my busy mind, out of my insecurities. It took me a bit because I lived in a lot of fear and anxiety and a lot of busyness. And it was profound and it was amazing and it was incredible and it was what I was looking for, because I started to realize that my mind wasn't just my personal thinking, that I was connected to a greater intelligence. And the greater intelligence you could call big mind, you could call life. If you were religious, you'd call it God. But the energy of life, that everyone's connected to the energy of life, the intelligent energy of life. And you, in a quiet mind, you can feel that energy. And in a quiet mind, you can have new thought. And the new thought is the answers to the problems that you have. And the new thought is the solution to those problems. So if you get out of thinking about the problems into an empty mind to get something new to solve the problem. So simple. It's so simple. So I just dropped everything, and I just spent as much as time as I could on Salt Spring, and as much time as I could being around Sid and just being around him. And fortunately, I got to be his friend. So I got to see him live his life. And that was as important as listening to him in a seminar, because he would spontaneously start talking what he would call truth. And also, I got to see him, how he reacted to life. Like, one thing that was so helpful to me was one time we were at his house having a picnic, and he went in, this was before cell phones, and he went in to answer the phone, and he came out and he was really mad. He was really upset. He was really angry. And I'm like, whoa, because I'd never seen him angry before. And in my thinking, in my mind, oh, you know, Sid never gets angry. Well, he did. But he went from being incredibly angry to completely fine and happy in a matter of, it felt like a minute. Like this angry, and he just dropped into being happy. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I didn't say this to him, but I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know you could do that. And I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I realized that if I had a vision of, like, when I saw Sid do that, and I thought, well, if he could do it, I could do it. I had a vision of something that I could attain. I thought, he just got over it. He just dropped it really fast. And I didn't realize that I had the thinking that you couldn't do that, that you had to stay in it for a while. Which is and to me, I thought, that's really stupid thinking. To think that I have to stay in upset for a while. It's like a certain amount of time you have to stay in upset. So I was able to do that. I was able to just get over my reactions really fast. Because, you know, people react, things happen and they go into reaction. Somebody says something, your feelings get hurt, you feel bad, or somebody says something and you get angry. And you don't have to stay there. You can get over it really fast. Mm-hmm. So things like that would happen. Being around Sid, I just watched him live life, and I thought, I can do that. But also at his conferences, I would get more insight about how to live my life in a way that had more understanding, or how to live life in a way that was easier. How to understand what it meant to be a human being. So it was a journey, beautiful journey, incredible. And it wasn't something that I ever thought would happen to me, because all I was interested in was psychology. But the kind of psychology I was interested in was the psychology of the intellect. I didn't realize there was a deeper psychology that had to do with insight and a quiet mind. Instead of trying to figure it out from what you already knew, you would go away from what you knew. and find new thought. Do you have any questions for me?
It's amazing to hear you talk about this, and it's I'm a bit jealous that I've never experienced that. Can you imagine? And
Well,
I can relate so much to what you're telling, because I've had a somewhat similar experience. I've had my well, depression-like periods, and
well,
luckily, sorry?
tell me about your experience.
I used to be quite depressed for several days
Mhm.
a row, really. And luckily, I had someone who said, "Well, just stay there. Just stay there in the cellar and enjoy the people walking by." And that's in some way that kept me there. But it also made me see, like, I would come out at some stage.
Mhm.
So it's very similar to what you've been experiencing in the past. And I saw at some stage, okay, well, I don't have to go there. And that was an enormous liberation for me, because it helped me enormously, because I said, oh, and I don't have to go there.
Mhm.
And then at some stage, my thinking stopped. And that was amazing. Because
You know,
at first,
oh,
sorry, at first
no,
I
no,
thought,
go ahead.
there was something wrong with me. My brain doesn't work anymore. And then I realized, my God, this is just exactly what I'm trying to aim for, what I'm trying to achieve. Get that quietness in your head, and being able to wait for the next thought to come along. And that's the moment I said, okay, now I start to understand what this is about. But I felt it intuitively. And the first time I heard about this was a lady who explained this to me. And within half an hour, and so this is life changing, and it is.
It
But you
is
have
like,
to, let it in.
yeah, you have to let it, you have to get it past all of your thinking.
Yeah,
And then my experience was an unlearning.
yeah,
Because like Sid would say things like, remember we were walking into a room once, and as he was sitting down, he says, you know, everybody lives in mental health, whether they know it or not. Even people in mental institutions live in mental health. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my goodness, I don't think I have mental health. I didn't know that I thought I was mentally unhealthy. And then as soon as I thought that, I realized my mental health. I didn't know I was thinking that I didn't have mental health.
that's main problem, really, because we are so conditioned of having to think in a certain way, a specific way, in a specific order, and it's all this conditioning which is being brought up throughout your life. And I'm so happy once in a while when I get younger clients in their 20s, they're still young. They have really well, you can form them much more easily. Uh, but on the other hand, well, sometimes with older people, just like goes like that as well. It's amazing sometimes. But the trick is you have to keep being alert about what's going on, because your brain is always trying to bend you back into your old mistakes, really, because that's what the brain does. The brain tries to keep you as normal as possible in his
Yeah,
view.
yeah, habits.
Yeah, the habits keeps you in the habits, because I think that the reason for that is because it's energy efficient. Because if you stay in your habits, you spend less energy with your brain. You don't have to think about stuff. You don't have to form new neurons and new synaptic connections. So it's saving energy, really. So it makes sense that we do that. But on the other hand, it's not very helpful.
But when you really learn something, you don't go back.
Yeah.
When you really understand, like I never went, once I understood moods, my moods were, the habit was broken.
Yeah.
Once you understand, really understand, the habits break. They don't have a hold on you anymore.
That's true.
So if you keep going, when I keep getting pulled back, in my mind, it's I don't have enough understanding yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it deep enough.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to see it deep enough.
Yeah. And that's also exactly what I'm experiencing too. It's learning to disengage from your old habits, really, and trying to solve to find out, wait a minute, I'm not helping myself here. This is not really constructive for life or a relationship or whatever you're worried about at that moment. It's not helpful. And we have to understand that our brain has its own goals, really, for us, which isn't always in sync with what we really need.
Well, do you have any other questions?
Rob, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I like listening to you. So please tell me more about your life, your 3P life.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that was really interesting is that like Sid asked me to teach, which shocked me. I thought, and I even said to him, Sid, teach what? I can't teach like you. And he said, well, of course you wouldn't teach like me. You teach like you. I said, but I don't have anything to teach. He says, you do. You have understanding. You've learned. Teach what you know. And he'd always say, don't teach what you know from here. Teach what you know. He'd go, there's knowing, and then there's knowing. There's seeing, and then there's seeing. You do that. He said, don't ever teach, only teach what you know. Don't teach from your concepts. And what you know has a feeling, a different feeling than your concept. So you know the difference in the feeling. Mm-hmm. There's a feeling to what you know, and stay in that feeling and teach what you know. So I started working with people. I was terrible because I was so self-conscious. I'd be thinking while I was, sharing what I knew, I'd be thinking, well, how am I doing? Do they like me? Am I doing it right? How do I look? Did they get anything? So I thought, sharing, I'm totally in my head about myself. And so at one point, it's like I got sick of that, and I thought, okay, I either have to get over this, I have to have an insight about this and get over it, or I have to stop because I can't do this. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Well, I had an insight. It was really interesting. And the insight was, love what you hate. And I'm thinking, love what you hate? I'm not going to love what I hate. So I'm arguing with my insight. I'm going to love what I hate. And I thought, yeah, but it's an insight, because the insights have a feeling to them. The insights have a real feel. And so I knew it was an insight, but I'm like, I can't do that. And I thought, well, maybe I can feel fondly. Maybe I can feel better about it. I'm not going to love being self-conscious, but maybe I can just feel better. Well, the next time I went to work with somebody, it was so much, it was like, instead of my thinking being right here, it was like it was here. I could see past it. There was distance. I thought, this is good. So, and then what happened is that, given that it was a bit distant, it wasn't like in my face, not as intense, it was easier. I started to be able to just dismiss it. So I got over being self-conscious. I just stopped. I got over thinking about myself when I was working with people. And when I started, even now, if I start to think about myself when I'm working with people, I just dismiss the thought. There's no place for thinking about yourself when you're working with people. Because if you're thinking about yourself, you're not listening and you're not engaged. So that was a fun story and a very intense time, because I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea if I'd have an insight, no idea if I'd keep working with people.
There's a lot of people who have trouble starting to coach this, or starting to use this in interaction with other people.
That's because you think too much about it.
Yeah. And that's a very important point, that we keep thinking about it.
Yeah. And the thing is, what matters is that I was talking with a student right before I came on to this interview, but we were talking about starting to work with people, and I said, if you just show up and you really treat them like a real person, like your friend, and you're nice, and you're interested in them, and you're warm towards them, and you engage with them, that's it.
Yeah.
Show up and be nice to people, and be interested and engaging, and listen. And then as you listen, things occur to you. It's very simple. It's extremely simple, but you have to put yourself aside and put your thinking aside.
That's the biggest thing.
And engage with them and listen to them. Be interested in them and listen to them. But yeah, you put your thinking aside.
Yeah. And it's so important that you really, well, try to be without judgment. Just hear and listen to people, of what they are, well, up against. And
and the thing is, judgment is just a thought.
Yeah.
Now, it occurs to me sometimes when I'm listening to somebody, judgment will come up, I'll judge them. But then it's like you just toss it aside. You toss it away, because there's no place for judgment in a session. Now, if you want to have judgment in your personal life, you can go ahead, but I mean, not that that's not a good idea either, but it's in a session, there's no place for it, because it gets in the way.
Yeah.
It gets in the way of listening, and it gets in the way of goodwill.
tend to tell my clients judgment is for things, not for people. Then it has a function. But don't use it on people. Who are you to judge someone else?
But I think that it requires a real grounding, a real understanding of thought, of the arbitrary nature of thought.
Mm-hmm. That's something really deep.
That really helped me to understand the arbitrary nature of thought, to really see it as a product that was helpful at times,
Mm-hmm.
harmful at times, but was a product of mind and not the truth. The content, you know, the principle of thought creates content.
Mm-hmm.
So our minds are filled with content. And that's just the way it is. We're constantly creating content. And it's not a problem if we let the content come and go. But when we get attached to the content, or we feel right about the content, or we react with fear to the content, that's when we got caught up in it. So to the extent that a person can understand or see the arbitrariness of thought, and that was what was wonderful about being around Sid, is you really got the feel that he saw thought as nothing. He just saw it as nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really a way of making sense of what's going on. And as long as we don't make it or add value to it, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as we start adding value to it, or judging it, or making it important or unimportant, or whatever we do with it,
Mm-hmm.
it starts
That's
to go
right.
awry.
That's right. And that's why people get into trouble. And one of the things that happened as a result of being with Sid is that George and my relationship turned around from bad to good. Now, how we turned it around is we stopped being attached to our way of thinking about how the other person should be. See, that's what gets people in trouble in relationships, is they get attached to how the other person should be. And how we were able to recover our relationship is that we realized our attachment to how our thinking about how the other person should be. That was brilliant.
Mm.
And so one of the first, when we started working with people, our first population were couples. And George wrote the relationship handbook.
Yeah, I read it. Wonderful.
And so we would work with people on the verge of divorce. That was what we did that for years, until a client who came with his wife for help he said to us, I want you to work with one of my businesses. And we said, well, wait a minute. We don't do that. We work with couples. He says, well, businesses are relationships. It's the same thing.
True.
So we said, okay, we'll work with your business. And it's true. I mean, when businesses get bogged down, it's really the problem is that the teams or the partners or the client, the way they work with clients, it gets all bogged down. So we started working with businesses. We switched because we just started working with relationships in business. That was funny. It's a funny story that we didn't intend to do it, but our client got us into it.
Isn't that wonderful? That's the best advertisement you can get, really.
Yeah.
If your client comes to you and say, I want you to get in here and help us, that's wonderful.
Yeah. It's really. So we stopped working with couples at that point and just became business consultants for a long. But it's all this. It's all the same thing. It's all boils down to the power of thought and how people relate to their thinking and how they see thought and how they either respect it or don't respect it, or whether they take it seriously. It all boils down to thought.
And it's most of the time it's the same thing. When you talk to people who want to help you with your business and so on, they said the first thing they ask is, what's your niche? And I always say, I don't have a niche. I don't believe in niches.
Yeah.
What we do is applicable anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so true. It doesn't make sense to say, oh, you have to be in the constructor's business or in the technology business or whatever it is. It doesn't matter really.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I've worked with what I'm sometimes mockingly saying, I work with roofers and also with general managers. It doesn't matter. And I have actually had 2 roofers in my business, and they had the same problems as these general managers, exactly the same problems.
Yeah, it all boils down to how people think about things and what they do with their minds and how they relate to them.
Yeah,
it's very simple.
And also at the same time so complex because we overlook it. I sometimes tell people it's at the point of your nose. The problem is only you're looking over it all the time. It's just under the tip of your nose. If you look there, that's where it is.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I could keep telling stories.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear you to tell these stories, because it's so the thing about the you said earlier, it's about thought being oh my God, I can't recall the word you use. Arbitrary. Yeah. And it's so true. It is so true that you said that.
Yeah.
And it's so useful for many of us as well, because we're still youngsters at this.
Well, see, I thought was true. I thought what I thought was true.
Mm-hmm. That's what everyone does.
If I wouldn't have thought it if it wasn't true. And I kind of went, wait a minute, no, that I got that wrong. People just think, and they'll think anything. And then you decide for yourself what you want to be true. It's arbitrary what people decide.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating what they decide.
Yeah, because we create
They,
our reality from it.
they decide spiders are bad. They decide spiders are good. They decide, going outside and gardening is really good. They they decide gardening is really bad. I mean, it's people have just every kind of thinking, and then they decide. They got it. People, I had it backwards. Backwards.
Well, everyone has really in the beginning before you know this, and that's a funny thing. And we have to really disengage people from their thinking. That's probably the best way to describe it. I don't know. Most of the time, when I tell people, don't trust your thinking, because it isn't always true.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sit looking at me with lazy eyes. Can't be true. What I'm thinking is true.
Yeah, that's a conundrum, that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because your thinking is, you're a thoughtful, you're a thinking creature, and you use thought for and against yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to understand how to use it in a way that works. And that's on you to decide. Now, one way to decide, like one way that I learned from Sid to decide, is, does your thinking uplift you, or does it make your spirits go down? If it makes your spirits go up, trust it. If it makes your spirits go down, don't. It's that simple.
Yeah. I generally call them helping and non-helping thoughts.
Yeah.
And if you have helping thoughts, just go for it. And if you have non-helping thoughts, don't believe them. Don't go there. Mm-hmm. Let them go. Okay. Wonderful. It's already time. It's.
I know the hour goes by fast, doesn't it? When you talk.
Amazing. Yeah, amazingly. Thank you so much, Linda, for your time.
And I'm so happy that you guys are up to this in Denmark.
Not Netherlands, but it's quite near. It's quite near. Yeah, I can imagine. But Denmark is very active right now. I know they are very active.
No, I thought you were from Denmark. You're from the Netherlands. Okay.
Yes, we're from the Netherlands. So it's also small, so it's easy to mix us up. As it doesn't matter. And
I'm so up to this in the Netherlands.
We have a small group here which is working quite hard to get this understanding further along.
No, Natasha is in Denmark, right?
Yes, Natasha is in Denmark, and she's also stimulated the activity of the country groups. So we have a Dutch-Belgian group, because half of the Belgians speak Dutch, well, Flemish really. It's a version of Dutch.
Well, I just got off the phone with someone from Poland.
Oh yeah, I know. They're active now too. Yeah, they started recently.
Yeah.
And there's quite a big group in Germany.
Yeah, I've talked with their group before.
In Czech Republic, there's a big group. They're very active. They're organizing a new a seminar in May, I think. Yeah, it's in May.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
The world. The thing is, when I met Sid in the early 70s, no, it wasn't it was 76. Mm-hmm. He said this would go all over the world.
Well, it does. It does.
And at that time, it was just in Salt Spring. Mm-hmm. Now it's all over the world. It's amazing. I wish he could see it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I wish he was alive, that he could see what happened.
Yeah.
But he did. He said, this is going to go all over the world. It's just a matter of time, and it'll be all over the world.
Well, we've got a big growth here in the Netherlands, because there's a lot of people who are interested in the principles. There's quite a few people who are trying to well, to stimulate the understanding and bringing it forward. There's at least 5 registered practitioners here, so that's good too.
Really good. Yeah.
And yeah, and it's good. It's developing this way, and I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Where do you live in the Netherlands? What city?
I'm living near Den Bosch. That's not going to help you very much. It's just in southeastern part of the Netherlands. And but well, Netherlands is small. You can drive in 3 hours from the north to the south, and 2 hours from the east to the west. So that's all there is. It's a small country. There's a lot of Dutchmen all over the world, by the way.
There's a what?
There's a lot of Dutchmen all over the world, by the way.
Yeah.
There's 70 million and 17 million of us in that little.
Well, one of my best friends was, his parents came, he died recently. He was way up in his 90s, but his parents had come from the Netherlands, and there were a lot of people that would come here into this area because of the farmland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can imagine. Yeah. It's not so nice to be in farming here in the Netherlands anymore.
Yeah.
It's quite complicated.
Similar. The land, like we do tulips, like you do tulips, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like our tulips are out now. It's incredible. They're
Yeah, it's
fields,
beautiful.
acres and acres and acres of tulips.
Oh, beautiful. That's so beautiful. Yeah. We have these here in the Netherlands behind the dunes and near to the sea, and it's beautiful when you get there in spring, and you can smell them from afar. If you drive by in your car, you can smell the flowers in your car. It's amazing.
You mean the tulips?
The tulips and the hyacinths and the daffodils and all that. That's wonderful. Yeah.
We don't have fields of hyacinths, but we have fields of
They are smelly.
Daffodils and tulips. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have the hyacinths are the most smelliest ones.
Yeah.
You can smell them from kilometers.
They're very intense.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I have to go.
Thank you very much for being here, Linda. Thank you very much. I'll copy the recording to Terry.
All right.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Have a nice.
Thank you.